This is the White Coat Investor Podcast, Milestones to Millionaire, celebrating stories of success along the journey to financial freedom.
This is Milestones to Millionaire Podcast 182. Pharmacist pays off student loans in 2 years. Unlock the power of your retirement savings with the Mega Backdoor Roth Solo 401k from My Solo 401k Financial. As the leading provider, My Solo 401k Financial allows you to contribute up to $76,500 annually to your Roth account, enabling tax-free growth and substantial future savings. They simplify the process by helping you open accounts at your preferred bank or brokerage and handling all compliance support. Accelerate your retirement nest egg with a Mega Backdoor Roth Solo 401k plan from My Solo 401k Financial at www.mysolo401k.net. All right. You guys hear ads every week on the podcast, and that's obviously part of the podcast, right? We're a for-profit business. We got to make payroll and all that. But sometimes an ad is an accomplishment, and this is one of those cases, right? This is a sponsor I've been trying to bring onto the podcast for like 5 or 6 years. It's a company I really like. This is where Katie and I had our solo 401k before we had employees at WCI and had to change to an ERISA 401k plan. This is the company we had it with. And we just think they're great. We think they're the cat's meow. And we've been wanting to promote them to you like crazy for the last 5 or 6 years, but felt like we probably shouldn't, give away too much free advertising. But they're a wonderful company. And if you are, transitioning away from the Vanguard Solo 401k, I think this is a great place to go. If you just want a customized 401k because you want customized features like a Mega Backdoor Roth, you're not going to get that at a cookie cutter 401k, solo 401k like at Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, which isn't available anymore, or a Census. You're not going to get that feature. You got to have a customized plan, and this is a great provider of it. And I can't say enough good things about them. But anyway, today, after our interview, and we have a great interview today, stick around afterward. We're going to talk a little bit more about solo 401ks and Mega Backdoor Roth IRAs. If you don't know what I'm talking about with that stuff, we're going to go through the basics and a few cool tricks you can do with those accounts. All right. One other thing I'm supposed to tell you about, for those of you who buy bulk orders of White Coat Investor books, like you pass them out to students or you pass them out to residents or you want to give them out at a meeting or something like that, we do offer a discount. If you're buying 25 plus, or if you buy 100 plus, you get an even bigger discount, but you can get a discount at 25 plus. Just email books@whitecoatinvestor.com and we'll work that out with you and ship them to you as a box. It's better for us. It's better for you. If you want to buy a whole bunch of them, you don't have to go to Amazon and just, crank up the number that you're ordering. You can get a special deal. So bulk book orders, email books@whitecoatinvestor.com. All right, let's get into this great interview. It's a wonderful one today. Our guests today on the Milestones to Millionaire podcast are Jason and Kristen. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, let's start by, why don't you tell people what you do for a living, what part of the country you're in, and how far you are out of school.
So my name's Jason. This is my wife, Kristen, as you mentioned. We live in Florida, and I graduated in 2019. So yeah, we're 5 years. I'm 5 years out of pharmacy school. My wife is a nurse, and she graduated. What year did you graduate?
2014.
2014. So yeah.
Okay. Now tell us what milestone we're celebrating today.
So we paid off my pharmacy student loan, which I believe was about $185,000.
$185,000. And how long did it take you to pay that off?
2.5, just around 2 years, if I remember correctly, just around 2 years.
2 years. 2 years. I mean, that's almost $100,000 a year you're putting toward this debt. That's pretty impressive on your income.
Yeah, it was a journey for sure. I know that we basically lived off of most of my salary as a registered nurse. Why every bit of money that he made, he used it towards his debt. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So tell us, what was your income over those 2 years, your combined household income?
So our combined household income over the 2 years was about 170?
Yeah.
170, 175?
Yeah, once you got your job.
So, I mean, after paying taxes, there's not a lot left to live on. How much do you guys think you spent living over the course of those 2 years?
That's a great question. I mean, we never broke down that math like that. Probably like 70 max, 60 max, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it was that much. I'm not sure the math works out to do that. Was there any other money coming in from somewhere? Did you sell something, or did somebody give you something, or did someone die and you inherited something, or
No,
is this all just your earnings?
none of that. I mean, so you have to take it back a little bit. I graduated literally right before COVID. I graduated in November. I got licensed in November of 2019, and then COVID happened. So the biggest thing for us was that they had the student loan pause, and there was no interest accruing on our loans. So that was the biggest help in terms of money, because normally those rates are at 6%, 7%. So that would have made it. There's no way that would have been happened in 2 years if we had to do the interest part of it. As far as working or income, no, there was no inheritance, nothing like that. But we did have like 2 and 3 jobs at a time. I was working at various pharmacies. We took all of the overtime that we could find. Any overtime, any day, anytime. We worked. We just worked and worked and worked.
So take me back a couple of years ago, this discussion you had where you guys decided to do this, because people don't just do this accidentally, right? This doesn't happen naturally. At some point, you guys looked at each other and said, let's take these student loans in the corner and drop an anvil on them.
Yes.
And tell me about that discussion.
So we got married in 2017. And so, you sign up for that program, you kind of know a rough estimate of kind of where you're going to be. And I hated the idea of a student loan. I knew it was necessary for our school, but I said, I did not want to carry this around for 30 years or 20 years. I didn't want to carry it around indefinitely. So I looked at my wife right as we got married, even though I was making $0 and I still had school to go, and she was working away just to put the roof over her head. And I said, I want to pay this off in 2 years. I don't know if that's even possible. But that's my goal, is to pay this thing off in 2 years so we can continue to live our life. And so that was a discussion that we had before we got married, then even as we got married. And even though there's nothing actionable that was going on at that time, but we just continued to say that out loud and say, we need to have a plan for this. Even though it wasn't a definitive plan, at least it was a goal. And then once I started working, we said this, and the student loan pause was there. We really said, this is our moment. Like, this is our opportunity. And we need to make the very most of it, because I know now you can look back on COVID and maybe, we understand a little bit more. But at the time, nobody knew how long that student loan pause would last. So I was working like, every extension they had, or I was like, that's it. Like, this is the end of it. Like, that's that. We got to do everything we can until then. And then the extension would happen. We'd be like, hey, we got more time. Like, let's go.
So when did you realize this was going to be possible? I mean, at the beginning, it just feels like it's such a huge goal, right? That you're never going to accomplish it. When did you feel like you really picked up the momentum?
Snowball.
The snowball. So we're Dave Ramsey people. We're doing the snowball effect. And I'm the nerd. She's more of the free spender. So I'm the one getting up every morning. Like, I know exactly how much it is, exactly where we're at, kind of planning it out roughly. The overtime is what makes it a little harder to plan out and such, and how often I'm working the other jobs and she's working the other jobs. But I think about midway through, we paid it off in November of, what was that, 2022? Yeah. And so I think maybe early 2021, maybe by the summer of 2021, we're sitting there going, okay, no, this is adding up. Like, the pause is there. Like, we're okay. Like, again, enough things broke in our favor. And okay, we're still working and things are going good. And okay, there's some raises in here. And okay, like it was on track.
Now, Kristen, you're more the free spirit, the spender, whatever you want to call it. Although I don't think I really believe either one of you is a huge spender, given what you've accomplished. What was the hardest part of this for you?
So it definitely takes 2 individuals, right? It takes someone who is determined, like he is, and saying, we're going to stick to the budget. But it also takes the other person saying, okay, we are going to stick to that plan, but we're going to make sure in the budget we have a little room to have fun, occasional restaurants every now and again, or just time over with our friends. So I made sure that we had some fun in the relationship, and then he brought more of keeping us on track. And so,
what was the biggest disagreement you had over the course of that 2 years?
Oh,
financial disagreement. I don't need to hear about the other one.
I think the one that comes to mind is house buying. That was one, especially which is complicated, right? Because how COVID changed all that. But that's one of the ones that I remember was other people were buying houses and we were watching the prices of houses and things go up and the limited quantity and supply and the demand and all of that. And I was like, no, we really want to stick to this plan. I don't want to buy a house on top of this, on top of this debt that we have and really alter our plan. And so that was maybe for me the primary disagreement.
Yeah. And I'd say that I think the idea we had to remember along the way, or I had to remember, is we're not keeping up with the Joneses, right? So we had a plan, we had goals, and I wasn't to be looking around and what this person's doing and that one's buying, because we had bigger dreams, bigger goals. And just saying no to yourself and making sure you have that self-discipline was really a part of our journey.
Yeah. The delayed gratification.
Did it end up being harder or easier than you thought it was going to be at the beginning?
I'm not sure if I knew what to expect. I think once the ball got rolling, it was easier. I think initially it was difficult because, and again, that's COVID is, even though we were in healthcare, nobody was hiring at the time, like when this thing first started. So that was really discouraging. I went 8 months without a job, I think. So that part I would say was harder. The circumstances under which it was happening was both easier and harder because the student loan policy was great, unanticipated, tremendous blessing and benefit. Finding a job initially, so much more harder than anticipated or expected. And so I think it was some combination of both. I got my job, and I mean, she was rolling along because nursing, you can never have enough of those. Once I got my job and I was able to start really rolling, I think it was easier than expected because there was so much demand and so much need for healthcare professionals at the time. I mean, there was a plethora of opportunities to work. So it's just like, we literally 8, 9, 10 days in a row, you'd be working. You had a day off and somebody called and you were like, I'm coming. That's just kind of what happened.
So this is fascinating, right? You decide to go to professional school. You borrow an ungodly sum of money to go. And you come out and basically the market tells you, we don't value what you just spent the last 4 years doing and borrowing a couple $100,000 to do. How were you mentally with that? 8 months looking for a job with a pharmacy degree. What did that feel like?
Very discouraging. Very, very discouraging. You're sending out applications, you're sending out resumes, you're talking to people. I'm old school. So like I outlined every pharmacy in like a 15-mile radius, and I printed out my resume and drove it to them and dropped it off. Everybody, anybody. I'm walking into hospitals that I probably shouldn't have been walking into because of COVID. But I did everything I knew to do. Not understanding yet that these places were even just trying to hold on to the staff they had. Right. I heard about that on the other end of it after I got my job. It was like, oh yeah, we were struggling like to keep our jobs type deal just because you didn't know, like nobody knew anything. But yes, it was that day after day. One, you have this degree that you've like worked so hard to earn and now you can't use it. So that's terrible. And then it feels indefinite. It feels indefinite. It's just not the normal job seeking process because where you're like, oh, well, we'll just go on to the next interview, the next thing. It's like, no, we're not interviewing. No, we don't have a need. No, we're letting people go. No, we don't even know if we're going to be open, if our business is going to be open. So you're like, well, shoot, there's not even light at the end of the tunnel here. It's just this is where we're at. So it was rough.
That sounds really hard. All right. What advice do you have for somebody that is just like you were a couple of years ago, or, it's been a little while, 4 years ago, that's sitting there, coming out of pharmacy school or, PT school or PA school or medical school or whatever, sitting there looking at $200,000 in student loans. What advice do you have for them?
I think my two things are stick to the budget. We have a monthly budget meeting where once a month at the beginning, we sit down and we talk for about an hour about review our expenses from last month, plan for what's in the month coming and the things that are ahead. So making sure that we stick to the budget. And then the second thing that both of us talk about, and I think we can mostly say, is living below your means. So he'll talk about the pharmacy part of it and what it's like to have money once you become a pharmacist. But for us, it was just realizing we don't need some of the things we think we do. We don't need to eat out all the time, get as much coffee, So we just learned to say, you know what, just because we're making money doesn't mean we need to spend it just as fast.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you said. Your lifestyle, maintaining a lifestyle that is below your means is so important, because what they call lifestyle creep, like that's so easy. Oh, I've got a couple more dollars. Let me go do this. Let me go do that. Is so easy for somebody to get trapped into. I mean, I graduated and, we're on social media and people are buying houses, they're buying cars, they're buying all kinds of stuff. And you're sitting there and you're like, wait a minute, like we went to school together. Right? Like, what are you doing with your loan? Like, what's your story? What's your plan? And so that's really big and a little easier for me because I don't compare so much, but, that and staying focused. Yes. The budget meeting, like knowing what your goal is, being in my case, being in agreement with my spouse that, hey, we have this goal together. This isn't going to last forever. We are going to be able to accomplish and do other things in our life after this, but let's tackle this and knock it out. That was tremendously and a big deal for us. And then saying no. You got to learn to say no. You have to learn to say no to people. People are going to think you're weird. That's okay. It is weird. You have to be able to say no. People after church would be like, hey, you want to come out to lunch? You want to do something? And we're like, no, we're going to go home and like eat our sandwich or eat our leftovers or whatever. You have to be able to be selective. There's going to be a lot of things that you're just not going to do if you're really serious about knocking it out as fast as possible, which is kind of just where I was. I just thought about it every day with going, hey, I borrowed this money. I got something out of it. And I'm not going to wait around for anybody to forgive it because it's like me buying my house and saying, hey, why don't you pay for it? And you're going, but you're living in it. Like why should I have to do that? It just never seemed fair to me. I said, I earned something. I willingly signed up for this. It's my responsibility to pay it off. And I have the ability to do it. So therefore, I should do the very best that I could. I think that's biblical. The Bible talks about not having debt as well. And I said, we need to take care of this as best as possible. So we're just motivated. Just got to be motivated.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I could say, if that's all right.
Okay.
I would say letting people know about your journey is all right. You will need that encouragement because there's going to be times where there is no light in the end of the tunnel, or you lose momentum, and you will need those people who will maybe invite you to their house to eat something different than what you've been eating at home, or just we would take like a trip somewhere. We'd stay with friends, and of course, when you stay with friends, they're like, "Oh, we'll cook for you. We'll do this. We'll do that." And so you need encouragements along the way. And so I would tell people, don't be ashamed of what you're doing. What you're doing is very noble. And it's great. And it has a fantastic reward because you wake up the next day after you push that button. Woo! It's just, life is different. And so I would highly encourage people, just seek out encouragement. Don't go through it alone.
Huge relief to pay that off, I'm sure. But I'm curious what you did. I mean, you got a raise after this was paid off in 2022. You got a raise of something like $8,000 a month. What did you do with that?
Yeah.
Yes, we what we did with that was we saved and saved and saved so we could buy a house. So
now you're in a house?
So yes, in May of 2023, we were able to put down our down payment to get our house. So that became kind of the next thing that we kind of we didn't stop really our focus and mindset. Now we weren't working 3 jobs. I think by the end of that, I think we had tiered that down to maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And maybe we were saying no to some overtime by that point, just for our own sanity. But yeah, we continued to save. We were like, well, we need to come and save. We want a house. This market continues to go up. And we just put that money away. So again, our lifestyle didn't really change or increase in that manner. We just changed our focus.
Yeah, and we also went to Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Too. So there was that. We made sure we saved some money and we paid for that, cash flowed that, and we don't owe anything on any credit cards or anything like that. So we did get to go to Europe as well.
That was her big,
which country was it?
That was like her big goal or dream. So we said, you've been a big part of this. And I had been to Europe before, she had not. And I said, that's something we need to get taken care of.
Yeah, we went to England, Italy,
France.
Switzerland. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just a huge
everywhere
trip.
in Italy.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Super proud of you guys. Jason and Kristen, you knocked out $185,000 in less than 2 years. You should be super proud. We're proud of you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience to inspire others to do the same.
Absolutely.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Those guys are fired up. It's really interesting. Almost everybody we bring on this show, I ask them, have you listened to one or two of these so you know what we're going to do today? And almost always the answer is, I've listened to almost all of them, or I've listened to all of them, or I've listened to them all twice, or something like that. In this case, it was really interesting because Jason's like, no, I haven't listened to any of them. And I'm like, how'd you get on this podcast if you've never listened to it? But apparently somebody told him about it, or he figured it out and applied, and there he was. So, some people just figure it out without the white coat investor, and that's great. We're still happy to have you in the white coat investor community. And it's awesome to see what the power of focus can do in your financial life. All right, I promised you at the top of the podcast, we're going to talk more about solo 401ks and particularly about the Mega Backdoor Roth IRA. A solo 401k is just a 401k when it's only you and your spouse, right? If you have employees that qualify for the 401k, and that's going to be most employees, right? You can kind of exclude some minors and some part-time employees. But for the most part, any employees that you have keep you from having a solo 401k, sometimes called an individual 401k. But if you don't, if it's just you, if you're just an independent contractor, you're paid on a 1099, this is your retirement account. It's a solo 401k. It's wonderful. It's like awesome, right? You can do all kinds of things with it. This year, if you're under 50, you can put in $69,000 into your 401k. And there's several different ways you can contribute that. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you are 50 plus, you get a catch-up contribution, right? You can put in more money into it. I think it's $7,500 more that you can put into there. And that's how you get to the $76,500 that the ad at the top of the podcast talked about, right? That's awesome. And now you can get it all in there Roth if you want. That might not be right for you. Tax deferred might make sense for you. It does for lots of people in their peak earnings years. But if Roth is right for you, you can get a lot of money in there as a Roth contribution. Any 401k that allows it, and you can set up a solo 401k so it does whatever you want, right? Especially if you use a customized one. But if it allows it, you can do three types of contributions. You can make a traditional tax-deferred employee contribution, right? This year, that's $23,000 for those under 50. And that's tax-deferred. So it's $23,000 you don't have to pay tax on. So that probably saves you something like $10,000 in taxes off your tax bill to put that money in there. You can also make that employee contribution as a Roth contribution. So it's after-tax money. You pay tax on it. You put it in there. It's never taxed again. It grows tax-free. It comes out tax-free. And you roll it over to an IRA. And I think maybe even if you leave it in the 401k now, since Secure Act 2.0, there's no RMDs on it. And so you can leave it to your heirs and it grows tax-free for them for another 10 years. It's just a really awesome deal. Okay, so those are the employee contributions. You can also make employer contributions, okay? And this generally works out to be about 20% of your profit on your business as a sole proprietor, right? And so if you make $200,000, well, you can contribute $40,000 as a tax-deferred employer contribution to your solo 401k. If you're an S Corp, it basically works out to be 25% of what you pay yourself, right? So if your salary is $200,000, you can put in $50,000, 25% of what you paid yourself as a salary into that account. But for sole proprietor, it works out to be 20% of what you earn, right? Sometimes when you read the IRS forms, it says 25%. That's confusing. What they mean is 25% not including the contribution or 20% including the contribution, but it's the same amount of money. All right. So that's a cool way to contribute. But there is a third way, and that's called after-tax contributions. These are not Roth contributions; they're after-tax contributions. So you don't get a tax deduction for putting the money in, and when the money comes out, that principal comes out tax-free. But the earnings on an after-tax contribution are fully taxable, just like the earnings on a tax-deferred contribution, whether you do it as the employee contribution or whether your employer, aka you, does it as an employer contribution. The earnings all come out fully taxable at ordinary income tax rates. Well, that's the same way after-tax contribution earnings come out. But there's a cool trick you can do. And this cool trick is often called the Mega Backdoor Roth IRA. Not to be confused with the Backdoor Roth IRA, which you do with an IRA. The Mega Backdoor Roth IRA, despite its name, is not done with an IRA. It's done with a 401k. Okay. And it consists of two steps. The first step is making an after-tax contribution into the account. The second step is then converting that contribution to your Roth account. So moving it from the after-tax sub-account into the Roth sub-account. And I do this with one call to Fidelity every year, and the money's moved in there. It's no big deal. But because you didn't get a tax deduction on the contribution, there's no tax cost to the conversion. So just like, the backdoor Roth IRA, where it doesn't cost you to do that Roth conversion, it's the same with a Mega Backdoor Roth IRA. The difference is you can put tons of money in there, right? If you make enough money, and it doesn't take much, you don't have to make, 4 or 5x what you're putting in there. It can be a lot less as an after-tax contribution. So, even if you're only making a high 5-figure amount, you can max this thing out as after-tax contributions. And so it's really a sweet deal for those who, for whom this is like a second retirement account. If you already have a 401k, your main gig, and this is a second 401k, and you just want to use it mostly for retirement savings, and you're like, well, how much can I get in there? You might be surprised how much you can get in there as a Mega Backdoor Roth IRA. It won't be a tax-deferred contribution. It'll be Roth, but it'll never be taxed again, and you can get a lot in there, right? Some additional asset protection, obviously lots of tax protection there. It's going to grow faster in the account. It's a good deal, okay? You just can't do that with a cookie cutter, off the shelf, totally free solo 401k at Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab. You got to go to a customized provider, like the one that's sponsoring this episode. For a few $100s to get it set up, $100 or $200 a year to maintain it, you can make those huge contributions. Totally worth it. Great deal. And this is something that lots of people do to increase their retirement savings. Obviously, when you can save inside a tax-protected and asset-protected account as opposed to a taxable account, that is a good thing. And this is something Katie and I do every year. Now with our ERISA 401k, we set up the world's best employer 401k when we had to leave our solo 401k. But this is something that's pretty darn easy to do if you're still allowed to use a solo 401k. Okay, this has been the Milestone to Millionaire podcast. If you'd like to come on this, you can apply, whitecoatinvestor.com/milestones. Our goals with this podcast are to highlight what you've done and celebrate your accomplishments with you, but also to use those accomplishments to inspire others to do the same. Our sponsor today has been My Solo 401k Financial. Unlock the power of your retirement savings with a Mega Backdoor Roth Solo 401k from My Solo 401k Financial. As a leading provider, My Solo 401k Financial allows you to contribute up to $76,500 annually to your Roth account, enabling tax-free growth and substantial tax savings. They simplify the process by helping you open accounts at your preferred bank or brokerage and handling all compliance support. Accelerate your retirement nest egg with the Mega Backdoor Roth Solo 401k plan from My Solo 401k Financial at www.mysolo401k.net. One other thing I should have mentioned. I'm really getting those people who turned this off as soon as they started hearing the ad at the end. One thing I should have mentioned, when you have more than $250,000 in your solo 401k, you need to make sure that Form 5500 EZ is filed each year. Okay, really important. The penalty for not doing that is super high. You do not want to mistake that. It's due by July 31st of the following year. If you had $250,000 or more on December 31st, you got to file that form by July. The sponsor, My Solo 401k, can help you with that. Other 401k providers will usually send you some sort of a form to help you fill that out. But it's a nice benefit when someone's going to fill that form out for you, because it is a bad penalty if you forget to do so. All right, that's enough for this episode. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing out there. It really is important work, and we're here to support you. Keep your head up and shoulders back. You've got this. See you next time on the podcast.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.